All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So, the Bobby Brown story part 2. Let's just jump right into it. Side note. I spent the last 7 to 8 minutes trying to get an eyelash out of the side. So if this one's a little red, I swear I'm not on anything. It's just I got long eyelashes. Sometimes they start tripping. They start irritating my eyeballs. But anyway, part 2. Overall, I said in the last episode that I thought the second episode would be much better than the first. And in my opinion, I think it was. I was actually intrigued by this episode. I think that it just came off more polished. I don't know if they had different directors. But I think the second episode, it just came off a bit more centered. The thing I always say about biopics, especially when they do them about, entertainers and musicians, it's always hard to balance capturing the impact that they had on music and capturing their personal life and putting it together in a great package. There's some movies that do a great job of doing it, like the Tina Turner movie or the Temptations movie, or what's another one that I'll even kind of throw the Frankie Lyman one in there, even though it's more of a comedy. Those are movies where if you were never introduced to that artist, you leave understanding like, okay, they made some great music, wow, but they also dealt with a lot. And so I feel like when you make a biopic, that's always the goal of trying to balance that. With solely just the first episode, I still felt like they kind of dropped the ball with his musical impact. And somebody in the comment section did make a valid point about, well, if we want to be honest, Bobby's music career was kind of, it came and went, like, because it was huge, but it came and went. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that's fair. But I think even when you add in the second episode, there's not really a huge mention of music at all, and it's really just solely centered on his personal life. So if you really just wanted to get to understand Bobby's plight, the second episode was for you. If you kind of wanted a taste of the industry and what was going on and some of his personal life, that was the first episode. But overall, I think they do a better job of humanizing Bobby in the second episode. They develop his character so much better than they did in the first one. My only beef is I wish they would have done the same for Whitney, because Whitney was still the same one-dimensional character from part 1. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to make it seem as if the job was to paint Whitney in the best light because this was Bobby's movie. But the thing is this. If you look at how the timeline is put within this movie, because they jump everywhere. This movie pretty much, episode 2 goes from pretty much 1995-ish to 2018. However, they started in 1995 and then they jumped straight to about 2002, 2003. And I was like, now y'all know good and well, all of the Bobby tales and stories come out of that era that y'all just totally skipped. That was the era of Bobby pissing in the back of the police car and all that. Y'all cut all that out because, pretty much when you talk about how they humanize Bobby, I mean, I said in the first episode, like, if you put the first and the second episode together, the extremes of how this is presented, it goes from like a Mad TV skit to a Tyler Perry production to a Hallmark family Christmas special to, what's the network, Lifetime, that all your mamas watch, to a Lifetime movie of hardship where everybody dies and then it ends like an episode of Family Matters and everybody's happy. I said, this is really extreme. And I'm like, that's cool, but they never did that with Whitney, because even when you look at how episode 2 opens, Bobby's on the floor, overdosing, and what's going on with Whitney? Whitney is so high out of her mind. She got the music on, she partying, hey, and she tapping him, and he ain't waking up. What does she do? You look, Whitney doing a moonwalk. I said, Whitney couldn't even dance that good. Whitney ain't ever did a moonwalk in her life. And Whitney was doing the moonwalk into the bathroom to go finish doing her line of coke. I said, yo, this movie is like a hot mess. God, did I just hiccup and laugh? I didn't know I could do that at the same time. Anyway, what I want to say though, but to be fair, I just think in this movie, and just from what I've seen, and just from what I remember, and what was in the media, and what everybody says, because the thing with Bobby is Bobby was always painted as the problem, 100%. I do think sometimes he got a lot of the brunt when it came to the brunt of the negative attention and the bad press in comparison to Whitney sometimes. But I think, in my honest opinion, I think the two of them together, they were toxic for each other. I didn't live in their house. I could be wrong. I'm only speaking on what was presented to us, what we saw on TV, what we remember seeing in the news, what we saw during interviews. I just think that the two of them met at a time where both of them were very vulnerable. And you have to also remember, look at where they both come from. Look at their backgrounds. Look at Whitney Houston's family. Because listen, I got all kind of issues with some of them, especially that Pat Houston lady. She ain't even in the family, but she just doing all kind of crazy stuff. But if you've seen it or followed some of those Whitney documentaries, you know that she comes from a lot There's a lot going on in her past, and there's a lot going on in Bobby's past, and I think they do a good job of showing that with Bobby. Even in the beginning of the first one, where his friend gets stabbed, and then his sister's fiance gets shot in the car. So you see all that. They dealt with all kind of hardship, and unfortunately, some people are not in the capacity to deal with trauma. So when you add in fame and wealth, and then you add in drugs, like you get a combination that you don't know what you're gonna get. And so I think that's what we kind of get out of that. But let me move on. I'm over here preaching and talking about everything but the movie. And I think that was the other thing I was gonna say last minute. Because they paint Bobby as such an angel in this second one. I mean, they still do showcase some of the things that happen. And please don't take this as me trying to cook Bobby in favor of Whitney. I'm just saying based on what was out there. Like, all I'm saying is when you look at the documentation, there's so much tangible evidence of things that went on between Whitney and Bobby, where Bobby wasn't always in the best light. And I think the movie, they low-key took all of that out, which most people are going to do. If you're in charge of your own biopic, you can make sure you look good. So I understand the hustle, Bobby. I understand the business. But it's kind of like, y'all really just, damn, y'all did Whitney so wrong in this movie. But it is what it is. Whitney, but then, to be fair, because somebody said, well, listen, look at how things turned out. As much as we would love to love Whitney, as much, look how things turned out. And I'm like, damn, y'all just, Twitter. There was some good little arguments on Twitter today. But going back to the movie, I had a few questions. So the part where she cheats on him, which I was like, damn, Whitney was cheating too. But in that, I'm like, well, all y'all both been cheating, and Bobby, you done cheated with however many women. Was that supposed to be Ray J? I just wanted to know, because he kind of almost looked like him. But Ray J didn't, from what I remember, Ray J didn't come into the picture until like 06, 07, maybe even later after that. And when she allegedly was cheating, this was right around the B and Bobby Brown wrap up. Which, by the way, can we talk about B and Bobby Brown? Yo, I remember when that mess came out. It was the summer of 05 because I was in Savannah at my grandma's house. Like, when I tell you we used to watch every episode of that, I was like, man. I will say the actors had that scene down. That scene where they're in the store and they did that little song about the glasses. I was like, they had that crap down to a T. I laughed so hard watching that. That was hilarious. I was like, man. What else is going on in it? But that argument they had too, goodness, when the relationship is starting to end, and he says that line about the, nobody hated me until I got with you. I was like, ooh, I was like, dang, I felt that in my spirit. I said, ooh, Bobby, Lord. Even though I will say Bobby still already had a negative reputation long before he got with Whitney, but I do think he did get a wave of flack and criticism, because a lot of people were like, what are you doing with Whitney Houston? A lot of people felt that he wasn't, in her league. Like, he wasn't qualified to be with her at the time. Because remember, she was black beauty, black princess, all that, everything. And honestly, I think they did a great job of dissecting that, where he said that line about, no, actually, that's what was presented, but that wasn't who you were. I said, ooh, snap. And I was like, yep, okay, because Whitney was from Jersey. And I think Whitney had poise, but Whitney could tell you about herself. That Leo would jump out all the time and remind you. But interesting, he had that bit about that 25 million. Now that I just watched and looked, I didn't know about all that. Y'all, those of you who are like diehard Bobby fans and Whitney fans, y'all can dig that up and find the validation with that, as far as him saying that $25 million that he had made, he gave all and just shared with Whitney in the account and everything like that. I don't know. But let's get to some of the actual scoop. So the part that made me feel bad, I didn't realize, I guess I realized, but I never noticed, but he dealt with so much in the latter years, and I'm talking about the years after Whitney, to lose your parents, your daughter, and your wife, or your ex-wife, that you're still close to, all in the same 2-3 year period. Some people don't make it from that. Some people, they never bounce back. And so I think it's good to see that Bobby has been able to really rebound, and because I said that in the other episode, I said he's right now, I feel like he's living his best life. It's like he gets a second chance, and that's the cool thing about life. Even when things have gone wrong, even when you've messed up and you've done so many horrible things, or things are just not in your favor, you're always given a second chance if you take it. You know what I mean? And sometimes we get 4th and 5th and 8th and 9th and 10 chances to start over, and so it's good that he's able to process what's happened to him and manage it the best way he can and deal with it. But man, that's a lot. Like, I can't imagine the thought of, first of all, that's my biggest fear about growing old is growing up and then like losing my wife. That would kill me. You know, like I think that is, I'm not married yet. I'm just already speaking in the future about like being married. Like, man, that I can't imagine, because my dad died and I had to watch my mom process and deal with, you know, losing somebody that you've been married to for 30 years. I can't imagine. So just picture that on top of your mom and dad, you know, dying around the same time, and your daughter. That is like, goodness, because you just have to think, like, that's like 3 phases of your life all gone in an instant. One phase are the people who raised you to be whoever you are, they're gone. The next phase is the person that you meet, that you grow old with, is no longer there. And then what you produce doesn't make it. That's tough. I was like, damn, Bobby, I felt bad watching that. And I remember when Whitney died, because he was on tour, and I think it's still on YouTube, but I think that was what solidified the fact that, okay, Whitney's really gone. I was on YouTube and I was looking, because New Edition was on their tour. It was like all 6 of them, and this had to be maybe a day or 2 after Whitney died, and you just saw Bobby break down like on the stage and have to walk off. That was the saddest thing I ever saw. I was like, man, yo, that's Whitney's really gone, and poor Bobby. That has to be tough, because even though they divorced, you know, they still share a specific amount of time together. They share the prime of their careers together. There's memories that only the 2 of them will have. So even if they didn't end on the best terms, or however it was, you know, it's still, you still have that connection. What else is going on? Oh, I guess I learned me and Bobby Brown got the same shoe size. He's a size 12. I'm a size 12 too. But what's jacked up is when Whitney died, and how the family didn't let his family, well, I guess they wanted to be petty, and they were like, you know, y'all can't sit in the front, y'all got to sit in the back. You can sit here with the family, but the rest of them got to go. I thought that was jacked up, especially because Whitney was at his mother's funeral, and his family had no problem with all that. As a matter of fact, those clips are on YouTube. Like, and really in real life, all of them were on stage together. Like, Whitney did sing, what did she sing? Precious Lord, Take My Hand in the movie. She sings that, but then they all together, it was like New Edition with Johnny Gill. It was the 6-member version, and they had sing the Never Would Have Made It. And like, Bobby was on the stage and standing next to Whitney and Johnny, they all just hugging and singing. And so I was like, okay. And so I just thought it was jacked up that the Houston family kind of did Bobby the way they did him, with both the death of Whitney and Bobby Christina. You know, that's jacked up. And because like I said, I think there were some toxic people in that Houston family, especially when it's the brother who introduced Whitney to drugs, according to the documentary, where he says that they had started doing that stuff when they were 14, 15 years old, and it was more of a social drug. It wasn't them being addicts. It was just, you go to a party, do some heroin. Hey, it was Newark, New Jersey, or I'm like, okay. But damn, that's tough. Bobby's better than me. He's better than me, because the way I would have lit into that family when I would have got to that hospital and Bobby Christina was in that coma and they want to act like I don't exist. But yeah, can we talk about Nick Gordon? What's going on with Nick? Where's Nick at? Somebody riddle me this. I want to figure that out. Where's Nick at? Like, I wonder if Nick is responsible for some of these things, because, you know, they, like Bobby said, Nick was there when Whitney died. He was there when Bobby K died. They both kind of died in the same manner. And then Nick was on Dr. Phil, and he looked crazy as I don't know what. And I said, yo, what is going on? I don't know. But I have some questions about all that. The thing with Bobby K that gets on my nerves is I don't like how the Houston family exploited the mess out of Whitney's death and had Bobby K on that reality show like a month after her mom died. Because, I mean, Bobby K was doing the interview with Oprah. Then they had the reality TV show and all that stuff. I'm like, what kind of mess? Like, I just think when there's trauma, you don't put people out on TV to live it in front of the world. I said the same thing about I said it a few videos ago when Fantasia had the suicide attempt, and then her record label had her on Good Morning America like 3 days later to promote her album, and then made her talk about the suicide attempt. I said, I don't think she's in a headspace where she's over however she was feeling, if that's the way it went down. What kind of the industry is so toxic. People do a lot of things for fame. You know, like, man, and that's not a dig at Fantasia, that's a dig at the people who were around her. But yeah, the Houston family, it's something about that Pat Houston lady. Something don't sit right in my spirit with that lady at all. I just feel, I'm not gonna bash the lady, but I just see things that don't look right. They should have never had a reality show with Bobby Christina on it right after she buried her mother. Especially after it seems that she never really got the chance to have the childhood she wanted to have. because that was one of the questions I kept thinking as I was watching both parts. I'm like, where's Bobby Christina during all this? And they do show her in moments of turmoil, but I'm like, I was thinking in real life, like, man, where was this girl at when a lot of this was going on? Because there was so much that happened. I just think back to Bobby and Whitney in like 2001, 2002, 2003. Those were the moments where it was always like every time you saw something, you'd be like, damn, Whitney, no. Or you see Bob, God, no, Bobby, no. Every week it was something, I swear it was. And then you add in the Mad TV skits and the SNL skits, and you're just like, dang. But, you know, it is what it is. Overall, I think the second half makes up for the first, and it's a good balance. I still think Whitney got portrayed terribly. But the actress that played her, I think she did okay. But I think the Whitney that she portrays is the Whitney that's portrayed on Mad TV. That's what I kept getting. I didn't get Whitney Houston. I kept getting Deborah Wilson. But, you know, somebody else in the comments wrote, and by the way, I'm like behind on responding to comments in like the last 5-6 videos because I've uploaded a lot in like the last 3 or 4 days. But somebody said Phyllis Hyman should get one of these. And I totally agree. That would be a movie there. If you don't know who Phyllis Hyman is, look her up. That would be such a good movie because she was bipolar. She had all kind of stuff she was dealing with. And she was also Whitney Houston's label mate. And pretty much she got dropped in favor of Whitney Houston because Whitney was more marketable. And Phyllis used to shake the table a lot at the label. They were like, you got to go. But enough on Phyllis. That would be a cool movie though. But no, overall, I think the movie does a great job of humanizing Bobby, and you do get to see a side of him that we don't often see. Some people only know Bobby for what's in the tabloids, and I do think Bobby was pivotal in some things. Like, you know, Bobby did produce some of the songs on Whitney's Just Whitney album. So if you remember her single "What You're Looking At," which none of us remember because it didn't really do much. I don't think it was released in the United States. I think it was released overseas. But I remember Bobby had produced that, and then they had some different projects and stuff they worked on. And it's cool to see that in the later years, you know, how he started the charities and stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. I just wish Whitney was still alive. I really do. I wish things didn't turn out the way they did on her behalf and for the daughter. Because it's just sad to see some people just, they don't get the great outcome you want them to have. Because, you know, you root for everybody. You want everybody to win. So when everybody doesn't win, you're like, damn. But I would say, decent movie. It gets better. The second portion made it so much better. And by the way, they didn't talk about Bobby had another album come out in like 98, 99. They didn't talk about that either. I was like, they just kept skipping a lot of stuff. But it is what it is. Anyway, share your 2 cents. I am out. Subscribe.